Now give it to me.
Okay, good afternoon. Your AHA board felt it was important to bring in some perspectives from the dark side. And actually, that was the original brief, perspectives from the dark side. And I said, could we just maybe make it something a little bit more about reflections from the CMO chair? Now, I've been away from craft for the last 2 months, and I mentioned that to your AHA team. I'm no longer with craft, and maybe you want somebody who's more current. Their perspective was, no, you're exactly who we want, because we want you to tell our group exactly what's going on. So my inclination was, great, throw the unemployed single mom under the bus. I'm a little worried. It scares me. I don't have a paycheck. Okay, here's what you're going to hear from me. 3 things. I'm going to state the obvious, and I'm going to give you some perspective about why that's obvious and what's going on. I'm also going to tell you, second, how my team and I at Craft navigated the space a little bit, and you'll hear a little bit of what you heard at the AHA, but I'll keep it tighter, I promise you. And then I'm going to close with, what does it mean for all of us? And for all of us, let me just headline that right from the start. Major, major, major disruption ahead for any company, supplier, agency, brand in the marketing space today. Major disruption. Now, for me today, Latinas are the answer going forward on so many different fronts. But if you're sitting here today in this audience and saying, finally, the manufacturers and the marketers have woken up and finally they're going to search out Latinas, you are in big trouble. Because they're not just going to come to you. This disruption requires you too, regardless of your industry affiliation, to move to a new space. Now, as I thought about this crowd today, my perspective was, this is not an easy task, right? It's not an easy task. You want me as a CMO to tell you exactly why those stupid marketers cannot figure out how to find Latinas. What part of the equation in the last 20 years has not been made in a compelling way, where marketers don't get they have got to stop and take notice? You want the silver bullet. I don't have it. I honestly don't have it. I too struggled. I'll share you a little bit about some of my struggles and some of the struggles of other CMOs that I was engaged with. There's a proportion of you in this audience today, small portion I would guess, who are actually quite happy about where your partnerships are and where the progress is going. And what you want to hear from me is, forget about everything else, just tell me the future. Where's all this going to land? And I'm going to skate to that puck. And then there's a big part of you that just want to help get your partners, your clients, your other agencies on the path towards Latina. So I've got about 45 minutes. I'm not going to do all that justice, but I am going to start with the obvious. And the obvious is this. At 17% of the US, it is kind of clear to everybody that Hispanic spending, Hispanic investment is lagging. It's lagging. 17% of the US, on average, brands are spending about 5 to 10% against Hispanics. And despite the fact that Hispanics are going to be 80% of the growth going forward in this country, you serve that up to any smart, intellectual marketing person, they're going to tell you, that's where the opportunity is. That's what I'm going to go after. However, their investment spend against Hispanics is about 5 to 10%, which means in order for them to spend to fair share of Hispanics, they need to increase their investments by about 2 to 3 times. They are way underspending against Hispanics. If you said, okay, forget about fair share, let's go to percent opportunity. Let's spend on the percent of opportunity going forward. Well, that would mean their investments would go from 5% to 80% against Hispanics. Well, that's never going to happen. And despite the fact that every CMO that I know, every conference I've been to, everybody's saying the same thing. Hispanics are important, go do it. You don't ever see examples of all the great work being done against Hispanics. So what the heck is going on out there? I mean, it's fair to question, what the heck is happening? What's keeping us from going forward with Hispanic investment? And I'd contend there's probably two huge challenges that we never talk about. But now in my unemployed state, I'm going to talk to you about them. So those of you in the media, don't write this down, because that wouldn't be good. Historically, to be very honest about what's happening with Hispanics, historically the growth has kind of come easy, right? Think about it if you're a marketer. A marketer's perspective is, if I'm growing at fair share, I'm where I need to be. Why would I lean further into the investment? Why do I have to spend more to get to Hispanics? I call this phenomenon playing the short course, right? In golf, how you play a short course. Your short game in golf is very different from your long game in golf, right? You've got to perfect the spin. You've got to perfect the reading the greens. Your long game is all about taking a huge whack, a huge investment, and shooting for the stars, right? Playing the short course, the problem with that is the people who are making investment decisions today against Hispanics are not going to be impacted by the decision not to invest long term. I'll say that again. The people who are making decisions today, investment decisions today, on where to spend the money, brand managers, category directors, VPs, are not going to be impacted, because they're not going to be in place, when the lack of long-term investment comes to roost. It's not going to happen. And so it changes my mentality as a marketer. Why would I take the risk? Why would I lean in if it's a long-term investment? God, I'm on this desk, 18 months, 2 years, right? I would contend that we've got to think very differently. If you're a company today, you have to think very differently about how you do this. Now, there's been companies who have done this. Companies have stepped back and said, okay, it is a mandate. We're going to force Hispanic investment because we're so sure that's where it's going. Problem with that is no one's changing the targets. No one's changing what I'm required to deliver to the bottom line and to the top line. And so the decisions are in the hands of the people who won't be around to feel the impact. They're playing the short course. That's the first problem. Second problem is the ROIs against Hispanic are actually incredibly weak. They're not there. I see the Univision people here in the audience. I see you guys all smiling. You've been telling us for 20 years. Yeah, the investment, the ROIs aren't there, but believe us, they're there. It is true. The analytics today to determine what a true investment against a Hispanic is delivering to your business are not sophisticated enough to make the case for additional investment. So when you do analytics the old way and you've got old expectations and you're not reflecting percent of the population and you're not reflecting really the impact of that next incremental user who comes in, by the way, likely as a heavy user into your franchise because they are a big family, heavy spender, really a traditional consumer that is a perfect fit for your business. If you can't make that case, it's hard as a marketer to want to lean out and take the risk, right? In CPG, in the last 2 years, almost every single quarter, almost every single major manufacturer has stood up and said, we've missed our earnings. Our advertising's not working. Our trade investment's not working, right? So you already have those headwinds. Now imagine you want to be a marketer who wants to make an investment against Hispanic. And all the numbers that are printed to you and everybody else above you says it's not a good return. But you say, I believe in it, I'm going to go for it because I don't believe those numbers, and then you don't make your number. Now, it doesn't matter that everybody else didn't make their numbers because everybody else didn't take a risk like you took. So something's got to change in the way we are managing these ROIs. I call this phenomenon the self-fulfilling prophecy because if I'm going to miss my number, I'm much safer missing it in the way everybody else is missing it than doing something different and being the outlier, because that can be picked off. So you start getting into the mindset of the marketer, and you step back and you say, okay, I get playing the short course. I don't like it, but I get it. Corporate America, you better be doing something about that. And I get self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't like that either, but I do understand that. Is that what's going on here? And I would contend it is what's going on here. But the next question you've got to ask yourself is, how the heck do I break out of this death spiral? Because I've got Hispanics exploding in terms of growth. They're going to represent the majority of growth in this country. You can't be a brand today and not go up against Hispanics. You won't survive going forward. What's going to change? And I'll tell you what's going to change. Everything on the outside is going to change. And when everything on the outside gets so disrupted, so unplanned, so unexpected, every single one of us is going to have to take a step back and reinvent ourselves. Disruption is the future for every one of us. And if you think because you're on the agency side, or because you're on the media side, or because you are on the brand side, or the supplier side, or the procurement side, you're the police, you are absolutely wrong. Every single thing that is going to happen in this industry is going to affect every single one of us. And you know what's the beautiful about this? What's so fun about this, especially if you're a marketer? It's all being driven by the consumer. Every one of these things is being driven by the consumer. So by definition, this is a marketing problem. I love marketing problems. I can solve marketing problems. I follow the consumer. I can solve the problem. You've got three tremendously transformational things happening with this consumer. The explosion of millennials. Millennials today are the new mainstream. I mean, it is shocking. The new mainstream, 27% of the US. The most multicultural group ever in the history of our time. The most technically advanced, behaviorally the most different of any consumer prior to them. They don't accept the brands their parents use. They don't accept the companies their parents use. They don't accept the behavioral norms, the when to consume, when to get married, when to have kids. Husband, no husband, right? Nothing about them is predictable. Hispanics is a huge population that many, many, many companies for a long time have not even begun to understand. And what's even more difficult about that is that there's so many facets of the Hispanic population that it could take years of study to truly understand how to break into that group. And then you've got this third consumer trend all around strapped consumers. 6 in 10 households make less than $60,000. And although if you're an undergrad coming out of school, that looks really appealing, try feeding a family of 4 on $60,000 a year, despite the fact that Gwyneth Paltrow thinks she can do it. On food stamps, you gotta really wonder, right? You gotta really wonder. And so you step back and you say, okay, I get it, that's all happening. So why is the consumer so important in this equation? The consumer is so important in this equation because they're so different. They are rapidly moving to mobile and technology. There's an explosion of data as a result of that. And behaviorally, every single thing they're doing is changing. They are changing the profile of our customer landscape. They are changing the profile. Our customers are on their heels. They are completely changing the communications landscape, and I mean overnight. Companies who 2 years ago never even thought about millennials are shocked to find out that 40% of them today are parents. Are you kidding me? It's just shocking. So when you start thinking about the millennials today, you have to say millennials equal multicultural. They are the bullseye for every single thing. Any company today that wants to be relevant, they have to be the bullseye. And they can't be the bullseye in the old Gen Pop definition of the equation. They have to be the bullseye in the new multicultural definition, because they are multicultural, they aspire to be multicultural, they enjoy multicultural. It is who they are, whether they are culturally multicultural or not, right? It is who they are. And then you can't ignore the fact that 80% of the growth going forward is going to come from Latinas. That means 80% of the growth in the US is going to come from one population. How can you ignore that, right? Now, the way they shop, they are having a huge impact on our investment decisions. If you are in the brand side of the equation and you are investing money in communications and promotions, or you're going to the retail landscape and giving money to the customer, all of a sudden, guess what's happening? I said it before, ROIs are declining. So you look at what's happening in the customer landscape. This is a picture. This first part of the slide is really the explosion of options. For a millennial and a multicultural consumer, they don't see the shopping landscape like I see it as a cusp boomer or a very, very, very old Gen Xer. Is that right? I'm not Gen Xer. I'm old. I'm gray, but I appreciate those boomers. Okay, so they see all of these retailers as equal, right? When we say, what about club store? What about mass merchant drug? What about supercenters? That's not how they talk. How they talk is, gosh, when I want to shop price, I'm going to be looking at Sam's, Walmart, or Dollar General, because those are the price players in my equation. For any other CPG company, those are 3 different channels that I support, 3 different ways that I tie into promotional activities, 3 different ways, thinking I'm talking to 3 different consumers in those channels. When I want to shop experience, right, I'm either going to go to Target, Whole Foods, or Costco. Those are experiential shopping times for me. And think about your own shopping trips. You carve out more time to go to those stores because you want to look around. You never know if Isaac Mizrahi is going to have something new in the clothing aisle at Target that you just might have to go see. Or if Costco has something that you never knew you wanted, but it's right there, right? So you build up, you got to buy it, you got to eat the sample, so you carve out more time. The problem here, though, is it's not just how we separate these retailers. It's consumer shopping trips to these retailers. Across the board, with the exception of military and club, shopping trips are down at these retailers. Across the board, every one of these retailers is down. Shopping trips are down. You know what that means? If I'm spending money in those stores and expecting to get the same level of promotional lift for the dollars I'm getting, I'm not. My lifts are going down. I don't get the same bang for the dollar I put in there. You know what that means? ROIs are going down. You know what that means? I'm not making my number because I thought for $10 I could get this much volume. Now for $10 I'm getting this much volume. Now you want me to go jump and invest against Hispanics? Are you crazy? I'm already not making my number. And this is what's happening. It's not just the retail channel. It is the communication channel also. A #1 show today on network primetime pulls less than 20% of the audience it did 10 years ago, 17%. And it does so with a smaller audience at a higher cost. You know what that means in terms of how much more lift you got to get for that show in order for you to pay back your investment? Look at what happens when consumers are actually watching TV. It's 3, 4, and 5 devices. They're fragmented. They're not paying attention. They are talking while they're listening, while they're engaging, and they might be missing your message. But you're still paying for that valuable time in front of them. What about the path to purchase? When you go to launch a new product, you've got a very clear path to purchase. You're going to get communication out to your consumer. You're going to make a consumer trip over on the way in the store. You're going to give them a coupon. You're going to give them a trial sample. They're going to go buy it. What happens if they never walk in that store? Crap. You mean the money I'm spending there, too, is diluted? So all of a sudden, when you've got all these CPG players saying, our A&C is not working, our trade spending is not working, it's not as effective. Well, there's a reason for it. The consumer has changed and you have not. And when you don't follow the consumer, you lose every single time. It's not a one-time thing. The C's of change, consumer, customer, communication, are going to continue to be a burden to every one of us for the rest of our lives. It's never going to be slower than it is today. Think about that. How many people are frazzled, burned out, freaking out that you cannot keep up with what's going on today? And today it's slower than it thinks. 2 guys. Oh, that's so nice. You guys are all burned out. You're all burned out. You can't keep up. I haven't had an administrator in 2 months. Do you know how screwed up my calendar is? I thought I was going to be on vacation. I'm spending half my day just trying to manage calls. I mean, it's crazy, right? And it's never going to be slower than it is today. You're in the peak of your ability to manage this today, right? We're going to continue to see an explosion of on-demand content. We're going to continue to see an exponential growth in mobility. We're going to continue to see new norms by which people are sharing information. And globally, a level of connectivity unlike anything we've ever seen. If you didn't watch what was happening in any of the war-torn countries, you see it immediately. And so this isn't going to change. So when that happens, I think the question you've got to ask yourselves is, well, great, Deanie, now what the heck? Shoot! What do we do now? Where do we go from here? Because it is tough. It's a tough environment. And all I want, if I'm sitting in this room, is for marketers to wake up and smell the roses on the Latina consumer. Like, so what do we do going forward? And this is what I'd tell you. Whenever I've been on a brand that is spiraling out of control or a difficult situation, what do you do when you are in crisis? You call a timeout, you go back to when everything was working the way it should be, and you dig in deep to understand what were we doing then that's so on, that's not on anymore, and you quickly begin to understand where the challenges are. And so when you do that as a marketer, here's what you find. The great, great, great news, the fundamentals of marketing do not change, thank heavens. If you knew the 4 Ps of marketing, you know the 4 Ps of marketing. That does not change. You still have a product, you still distribute it through a place, you still charge a price for the price value bundle, right? And you still promote it, communicate it, actively build awareness on it somewhere. Those Ps don't change. What does change is the explosion of data availability and the enabling technology that helps you manage through this process. If it were just data for the sake of data's sake, you would be suffocating under the mountains of data that were out there. It wouldn't be interesting. What is interesting is the mountains of data that is out there and the technical enablers that help you get at it to get to real-time decisions. That's what's interesting. Explosion of cohorts, we've talked about this. Explosion of media vehicles. I really believe the new media channel of the future is going to be called the consumer. The consumer is the new media channel of the future, right? Follow your consumer, and you will have the breadth of vehicles open to you. You'll understand exactly what to go do. And then retail channels. When's the last time you bought something from Amazon? Weekly? Daily? Monthly? Did you ever do that 2, 3, 4 years ago? Not very much. So when you look at all the things that are changing, you put them through the filters of the 4 Ps, guess what? All of a sudden, what you need to go do becomes very, very obvious. You need new capabilities around how you get after insights. Today, we have the ability to behaviorally identify insights unlike any time prior to it. Monica Gill is here from Nielsen, one of the smartest Nielsen people I think I've ever met. She's a wee little person, but she is so smart. And most people are wee compared to me. But she would tell you there's a whole opportunity out there for you to learn, really learn about this consumer. But you've got to have new tools. There's a new way for you to target, to improve your effectiveness and your efficiency, to deliver precision. Need new capabilities. There's a whole new way to get after engagement and content and really, really build a connection with your consumer. But you've got to have transparency. You've got to be a brand and a company they believe in. And there's an ability today to get to real-time decision making against your investment spend. Remember in the old days, yesterday, When everything we depended on was marketing mix analysis, that was a year in review of what went on, that you often got 3 and 4 months after you entered the next year, you couldn't impact anything you did the year before, and you could only slightly impact the things you were doing in year. That's all got to change. My gosh, when this changes, won't this be a great place to work? The marketing industry, it would be so fun. And I contend that when this changes, it will be a complete reinvent of marketing. It will move to agile and addressable marketing, right? Marketing to the right person at the right time with the right message to drive the right behavior. Now, we've always had this available to us. Anybody here from the direct mail industry, right? We've always been able to be incredibly effective, precise, really get our message through to the right consumer. It's always been available to us. It was too costly, and there was no scale. Today, you can get to scale against exactly the consumer you want to with the right message in real time. You do this right, and you will drive the heck out of your return on investment. That's very important to marketers. It's very important to marketers. So that's the first piece. So let's just talk about what are the 3 pillars of agile and addressable marketing, right? First, you need data, and you need a lot of it, and you need good data, first-party data. That's the first requirement. You need to have access against data. Now, there's a lot of companies who've built their entire infrastructure, their entire being around data. You might have heard of them. Facebook, Amazon, Google, Yahoo, AOL, Twitter, Pinterest. They know the consumer 1,000 times better than you do, right? They've got first-party data that is real behavioral scaled, and they want to sell you against using all their tools. And it's fantastic. What a wonderful business prop. If you are going to own a brand, you need to figure out how you get data. Then you've got to have an infrastructure to manage that data so you can action it in an incredibly effective way. And once you've got that, you've got to have something to say to consumers that they actually want to listen to, because if they don't want to listen to you, it doesn't matter that you know them and you can get to them. They will turn you off every single time. So those are the 3 pillars. Now, if we break this down and we kind of get into each of the pillars just in a really brief way, I'll tell you, we have to get mentally our heads around the mindset that data is not a 4-letter word. And of course, I know that it is, but it's not. It's not a 4-letter swear word. It is not. It's also not something you should be turning your nose up at. Data's not, you know, how did you do on your ad testing, or what's your market share, right? Data really is today, you should be thinking about this data as high quality transparency and insight into a consumer set that you always wanted to understand, right? An amazing portal to understand human behavior that lets you get to insights in a way that's competitively advantaged and breakthrough. That's this data. As a marketer, you have to want to do this. As an agency person, you have to want to get into that. You have to want to require your brands to get a data strategy so you know more about this consumer. Because if you know more, you can do more, right? When you think about who is your bullseye in this entire equation, it is the multicultural consumer, right? The super users of technology, they fuel the data pools and they let you get to better insights. But most importantly, they become the place that if you understand them and you can deliver your competitively advantaged benefits against that group, that is the rings that will drive out across all your different consumer sets. So you've got to change your approach to something we call a total market approach. You have to be thinking about a total market approach, not Latinas versus Gen Pop and what should I do with African Americans. There's a total market approach that transcends all cultural groups, but you go to the point where there's the most relevance, and that's the multicultural consumer. So all of a sudden, you're seeing how Latinas come back into the realm. They become the bullseye of what all of us should be pushing for. At Kraft, we had an enormous amount of data in terms of breadth and depth. So just a little perspective, 18 years ago, Kraft placed an investment against data on a recipe website. On that recipe website, we collect 30,000 different attributes on every single consumer. So the depth of that data is amazing. 1 billion recipe touches a year, 100 million consumers come through the recipe sites. It's an amazing amount of first-party data. We then serve about 6.6 billion digital impressions a year. We collect data on that too, and that becomes the pool of first-party data. The best data you can have, highest quality, it's free, most transparent, most actionable. We then overlay it with third-party data, purchase behavior, other contextual third-party providers, and we get a picture of our consumer that I believe is truly, truly competitively advantaged. So data to fuel the engine. Next, the infrastructure. We built the infrastructure in 3 different ways. First, we built social listening rooms, right? Imagine all of the data that's available to you every day if you just sat on the internet and just watched what consumers were doing. Pulling that together in a way where you can literally get to social observation and you can drill into trends, into cultural conversations, into just social engagements and brand watching, not just for your brand in North America, but globally. And you can drill down to best understand who are the bloggers having the most influence, who are the people having the most concerns, how do you manage your reputation, how is your new campaign launching, what is your competition doing? You get a bird's eye view every single day of what's going on. It's listening at the speed of digital, right? Second, Parallax, a proprietary infrastructure where we hold the data, we put a DMP, data management platform over the top so we could cut and target consumers, and then we put a DSP on the back end of it so we could serve up communication programmatically. And then built out an advanced analytics group that helped us better understand how all these returns could improve a better investment profile. That was the infrastructure. Next, content. You have to know that in this space, content is king, right? I have to be able to say something to you that you're even remotely interested in hearing, because if I don't, you turn me off. And as you saw from P&G's announcement just yesterday about the fact that after spending $9 billion, I'm shocked by this number, this is validated, $9 billion a year globally on marketing, they're going to cut back their investments, they're going to cut back in their agencies because they're spending a little bit too much money, right? Now I would imagine if P&G is like the rest of my CMO buddies across the CPG companies, and I know they are because they were one of the companies I talked to, they have multiple agencies doing multiple levels of content at multiple price points, none of it efficient. None of it captured, none of it holistically getting to a consumer to drive a bigger bang for the brand. Content has to be king, but it's gotta be relevant, it has to be flexible, and it has to be efficient, because if I'm gonna follow this consumer, if the consumer is the new channel, I've gotta have creative, I've gotta have something to say, content that can flex to Facebook, to Twitter, that can flex to linear TV, to digital video on demand, right? And I've gotta have the ability to serve up a message all the way through. I can't spend hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on agency fees. So that's an area of major disruption, and P&G's not the first. They're actually the most recent in a group of about 10 different CPG companies in the last 6 months who have said, we're gonna get after these costs. What that means is what we're doing is not working, we gotta figure out what's gonna work, we gotta figure out how we get to what we're gonna work, and then we gotta make sure it works. A lot has to get done. Again, at Kraft, we had a built-in engine around content that was share-worthy. The biggest and most impactful content provider within CPG, I was shocked to find out for the last 18 years, has been Kraft Foods. We've been following recipes and consumer behavior changes with how they consume food, their dietary guidelines, their family guidelines, the cultural nuances of food. It's an incredible site. We host the #1 website for Hispanic recipes in the entire world. to shocking craft foods. North America, how is that possible, right? An amazing amount of recipes, 27,000 professionally culinary recipes developed, 30,000 recipes submitted by consumers. It's an amazing thing. It's amazing infrastructure. So we have something to start out in terms of content I want to talk to consumers about. If you don't have the recipe site, you got to get to something. A lot of companies have done it. Look at what P&G is doing with Pampers. Look at what Kellogg's is doing with Special K. A lot of companies are doing things that exist. So let's just talk very quickly. You're not going to get snazzy videos from me today because I was told to give perspectives and not get awards. So I'm giving you perspectives. So how do we do this for Hispanics? Well, literally, if you understand your consumers and if you can cut your targets specifically so that they are a scaled number and you can deliver precisely to that consumer the right message at the right time, then you really can know if you are cutting a group of consumers who have a low brand affinity for your brand and trying to get them to consider you. Matter of fact, you might even serve up a consideration message followed by, if they are motivated by the consideration, followed by a coupon in real time and be able to capture consumers in that way. We've done it. You also might be able to segment your consumers on who are my Kraft mac and cheese users. Do I just need to make sure that we're building an awareness with them, just to remind them again to use what's in the pantry and use us in more unique ways? And can I serve them a recipe to get at using it in a different way? So by having the data pool, by being able to cut it, it then enables you to deliver content in a very different way to activate the behavior you're looking for. Note that in this example, as in the next one, it is a total market approach. This is within the campaign of mac and cheese. This is not developing a whole new campaign for Hispanics, because we don't need to. If you start with the insight of multicultural, it does transcend cohort groups. Next, Oscar Mayer, one of my favorite examples of what we've done with the Hispanic consumer, right? You've seen the grandpa in the Oscar Mayer deli shave commercials. Well, for Hispanics, it's the abuela. And we've used her very similarly in terms of our print messaging, in terms of our linear and video serve up of ads, in terms of our Facebook applications, as well as recipe activations in Twitter and online. It's the same approach, the same total market communications delivered in a relevant way. It's this, when you look at it, you go, well, that's easy to go do. You mean that's all it means? Yes, but you've got to have the infrastructure. You've got to start with the data. Got to have the content, right? If you think this is just digital, you really have to rethink the future of where all this is going, because it's not just digital. It is not just digital. Today, we have the ability for the vast majority of print to deliver addressable to the household level specific messages by household. We can do that today on print. We can do it today on radio. Anybody have Pandora on their iPhone? Have you ever picked up somebody's iPhone who is the opposite gender, older or younger, and heard what their messages are that they're being delivered? My previous boss, Tony Vernon, I picked up his Pandora one day. Tony's a 58-year-old male, father of 3 boys, all out of the house, empty nester. He was getting Viagra messages, prostate cancer messages. I'm not getting any of that stuff. I'm getting menopause. I'm getting osteoporosis. I'm getting Match.com until the dogs come home. If I get one more, I just literally got a text message served up with some very sexy website, and I was like, oh, I can't believe it. But yes, they know who I am. Not that I'm looking at that stuff. They know. And I swear to God, if you guys print that, frustrated single mom, unemployed, turns to, no. They don't have their data right? They know I'm a single parent. Well, maybe they do know I'm unemployed. Maybe that, I don't know what they know. Move on. Okay, TV's gonna go this way. Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? I have no idea, but TV's going to go this way. Because it can. We all have boxes. We all have fiber optics. We all have a way to be addressable to the household level. And gosh, as a marketer, if I knew exactly how to deliver the right message to the right household, if I'm deli-shaved ham, Oscar Mayer, I don't want to serve to non-ham eating households or vegetarian households. I want to talk to the people who are going to drive my business. It's coming to TV. So ultimately, what we delivered, and what I think you have to think about delivering, is the concept of a self-sufficient ecosystem, an ecosystem within which you collect and have an incredibly accurate and large and transparent and actionable data pool available to you, so that you can develop content that is appealing, relevant, precise, effective, and drives engagement. And as consumers engage with that content, you build more data that gets you smarter, and so it really becomes a self-sufficient ecosystem. And that was the end goal. I'd be remiss if I didn't step back and talk quickly about analytics and marketing, because I think when you think of the future of marketing, what you're going to find is analytics is going to become an enormous part of what the future is going to be. It's going to become the thing that differentiates successful marketers from marketers who have great instincts. And for a long time, our industry has survived with marketers who've got great instincts and who just know in their gut what's right and how to go do it. But your gut cannot replace the enormous effectiveness available today in the data pool that exists. And so I think you're going to see a marriage of data and analytics, or marketing analytics, come together in a constructive way. For those creatives in the room who are going, oh, God, shoot me, I don't think that's this. I think it is a release. It is going to be creativity within a blueprint. You would never build a new house without a blueprint. You would never build or renovate anything without an understanding of where the refrigerator is going to go or where the sink is, right? So that you could really put your mark on what the look, the style, what it is you want to say about yourself. It's the same thing. This is going to make us better, not worse. But if you resist, if you don't embrace, if you are not pushing your companies and your brands and your clients and your partners into this new space, you will never understand the impact it will have. And you will become irrelevant. You will. It's just that is going to be the future. Someone asked me the other day, who are the companies in this space who are really managing data analytics beautifully? And you can't ignore the fact that the people who are doing it beautifully in terms of information, Nielsen IRI are by far the leaders in this space and will continue to be the leaders in this space. And they're doing work with some interesting partners to get after the future of marketing and the future of information. But don't miss the fact that Oracle bought BlueKai and bought Datalogix. Oracle's a marketing solution company. That potentially could disrupt the whole information industry if they got serious about getting after this. And there's some players in the middle, one of them called Market Share, who would contend they've already figured out a lot of this space and are growing by leaps and bounds. So this space is going to continue to evolve. Every one of us is going to move to a new place. Keep an eye on marketing analytics. So what do we do about it? I'd tell you first and foremost, one of my biggest takeaways is any brand that is not looking at a total marketing approach across all screens and all channels is missing the boat. Efficiency, effectiveness, you can't survive unless you are looking total market. You've got to build a data partnership. You've got to get the data, explore the data, have the data. You've got to have a strategy by which you get information in so you can act on it. You've got to optimize it and message based on behaviors. It's amazing. What happens if you're salad dressings and you knew last week someone bought Italian salad dressing out of your portfolio and today they bought fresh chicken? Would you be able to serve them an Italian chicken salad recipe? You could, and we have. We've gotten to information that quickly, right? And then advanced analytics. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you're doing, you've got to have advanced analytics under your belt. So, Hispanics will be the answer because millennials are the answer and multicultural is a reality. Marketers will have evidence of where performance of customized one-on-one messaging at scale can do to drive their business. That will happen, it's happening today. There will have to be a new set of ROI metrics coming forward that enables people to make real-time decisions, but those are well in development. Those are well already being released, and you've got a couple of social partners out there, Facebook, Twitter, some of those players who are contending they can show you returns significantly above anything else they have. The problem with those partners is you can't, on a relative scale, benchmark them against anybody else because they're different pools of data. But it's coming. And then you will have to evolve to stay relevant. So, from the cheap seats, in the unemployment line, working out, as a couple of people have mentioned, maybe too much on my upper body, I've noticed with the dress that overemphasizes. Maybe I'm a little too frustrated. Thank you for the time, and any questions?